Today's Macintosh shenanigans are brought to you by Squarespace. But more on that in a bit. Welp, it's that time of year again. The weather has grown cold and dreary. Days are short, nights are long. The scent of snow is in the air.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So I think it's the perfect time for a nice, easy, relaxing video, showing some love to a machine that I've been neglecting, even though it's probably my favorite all-time Apple design. This iMac G4 lampshade. And although it's a little bit ratty and literally being held together by double-sided tape, I have big plans for this machine, involving what might just be the last viable, modern 32-bit PowerPC Linux. So today, let's fix a few of its issues, upgrade it a bit, and then, just for fun, let's see how macOS 10 Sorbet Leopard runs on this thing. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy spending entirely too much time and effort rescuing and upgrading neglected old Macs, only to perform terrible operating system experiments on them, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. I have a lot of big plans for the new year, so it's definitely worth sticking around. This iMac G4 has lived a rough life. I bought this for basically the price of shipping from an upstanding member of the Action Retro Discord, who themselves got it out of an old printing shop, where I believe it lived a rough and tumble life out on the shop floor, being whacked by equipment and getting its screen pulled on in every which direction, which explains the condition that it's in. In addition to the front bezel being completely broken off, it has scratches and nicks all over the case and the LCD, but the screen itself is still bright and crisp. More importantly, the SuperDrive has decided that instead of reading optical discs, it would much prefer to just scream in agony whenever a disc is inserted. That is, if you can even get the door to open, which you kind of have to jam a fingernail in there and wiggle it around while simultaneously hitting the eject button. The hard drive also sounds a bit worse for wear. It works, but it certainly likes to make a ruckus and let you know when it's hunting for files. Still, this is a lovely machine. And personally, I think the iMac G4 lampshade is the most ingenious and beautiful computer design that Apple has ever produced, even up till this day. I mean, this thing still looks like a computer from the future, despite this particular model being almost exactly 20 years old. That's right, this 800 megahertz Mac came out way back in 2002, back when PC manufacturers like Dell were still trying to sell dudes on piles of plastic boxes. Apple comes out of the gate with a computer that was just shockingly unlike anything else on the market. I mean, look at this thing. It boasts either a 15-inch or a 17-inch widescreen in the first models with an active matrix LCD, magically floating on this beautifully engineered and balanced adjustable stainless steel arm, all perched on a white hemisphere which housed the 800 megahertz G4 and SuperDrive. Did I mention that this thing came out in 2002? I honestly believe that Apple could release this same design today and people would be just as blown away by it. In fact, this design is so beloved that some people take upgrading it to extremes. For example, someone in China replaced the LCD on one with a modern curved LCD and upgraded the guts with an Intel board to make the world's most beautiful Hackintosh. But that's not what we're going to do today. In fact, I'm banking on this 800 megahertz G4 being the perfect testbed for my favorite PowerPC Linux distro, Adderley, which has just released a bunch of new live DVDs with different desktop environments, including bringing entirely modern KDE Plasma 5 and Linux kernel 5. something, along with incredibly low system requirements. 384 megs of RAM and 600 megahertz for the desktop distros. So I really want to see what kind of modern Linux experience we can get from a 20-year-old iMac with middle-of-the-line specifications. Of course, after we replace the optical drive so that it can actually read DVDs, I hope one of these works, and we might as well throw in a janky SSD while we're in there. And I think I also have RAM laying around somewhere to upgrade this to at least 768 megs or maybe even a gig. But before we tear down this iMac, let me tell you about the wonderful sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. Easily create the web presence you've been dreaming of building, even with no experience, using Squarespace's all-in-one platform. It's really easy to get started. Like, say I wanted to build a site all about my love for this iMac G4. I just choose the type of site that fits my project best and then choose from a whole host of really beautiful templates. Sites built with Squarespace are fast, responsive, mobile-friendly, and built for SEO. So anyone could see just how futuristic this iMac's design was, regardless of what device they're using. Plus, there's a whole host of tools included to help you run your online presence: email marketing, SEO, analytics, e-commerce. So check out squarespace.com/actionretro today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use code ActionRetro to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, if you want a really good guide on how to disassemble these things, I'll put a link below to a video from a really underrated YouTube channel, the Museum of Obsolete Technology. But basically, this thing is like a sandwich, and we just have to work our way in to get to the optical drive and the hard drive, which are stacked on top of one another. And to that end, we're going to need to keep some thermal paste handy because that's kind of in the sandwich. And right here at the bottom, we have our user replaceable RAM stick. And there's another stick of RAM, a full-size desktop stick on the other side of the motherboard. And we also have a place for our airport card, which maybe I should find one of those for here. So here we have the bottom of the Mac, now only held on by the antenna for the non-existent Wi-Fi card, which connects all the way up under here. But here's the original stick of RAM. This is a Samsung 256 meg module, which we'll replace with this handy 512 meg Kingston. And we'll just get that old crusty PRAM battery out of there. And now we just have 6 more screws to remove to get down to this optical drive. And we're free. Now this is shockingly clean in here. There is not a single speck of dust. So I can only imagine that someone has been in this machine before. And normally I'd toss a nice quiet knock to a fan in here, but unfortunately I don't have any that'll fit on hand, and this fan's pretty quiet anyway, and it's, again, shockingly clean, so I guess it can stay. And that thermal paste I mentioned is right here on the inside of the chassis, and here on top of this heat pipe, and it's very degraded, so we're just going to go ahead and remove it so we can replace it with some nice fresh compound. Okay, now onto our little drive sandwich here. We have a kind of weird bracket holding this whole thing together. And then for the new drive, I have this one here, which seems to be pretty much identical except for being a year newer, but this is also a DVD-RW. We're just going to need to take the front faceplate off. And I've made sure that the jumper is in the same position on the new drive, which it is. And I'm kind of curious. I wonder if this is also off of an iMac G4, just a later revision. But there we go. Perfect slot-in replacement. Except this super thin little piece of plastic here broke. But I don't think that's a big deal. There we go. Perfect. exactly like the Apple Service Center would have done. And now for the hard drive, and it's pretty silly. Apple put this piece of white paper over top of it so that you couldn't see the hard drive if you look down through the fan in the case, which who's going to look through the little tiny holes on the other side of this fan to see what the hard drive is? But Apple did it, and we have to take it off to get to these screws. And in place of that spinning hard disk, we're going to use this M-SATA to 2.5-inch IDE adapter and this 2.5 to 3.5 IDE adapter. And we'll hold it all in place with this cheap little bracket. Yeah, so that'll fit in there quite nicely, just like that. And then I'll just have to screw this in here. There we go, perfect fit. Now let's just hope it actually works. Now, annoyingly, you have to put this thing most of the way back together in order to test it, which is pretty finicky. But I've got it back together most of the way. Let's try to boot it off of this FireWire hard drive and see if everything works. All right, we're booted into Leopard off of the FireWire hard drive, and actually it looks like our SSD does work, and it looks like at one point I installed macOS 9 Lives on there because there it is. But let's check the DVD-ROM. All right, that's a good sign. And I have this iOmegaware CD here. Okay, well, it seems like something is wrong with this drive as well because it is not mounting anything to the desktop. So I guess we're going to have to try a couple of these other drives in here. But in the meantime, let's just make sure it sees the memory and the hard drive. Yeah, so 768 megs of RAM and our Dogfish 64 gigabyte SSD. Excellent. All right, well, I guess third time's the charm. After some tedious drive swapping, I've got 2 bad drives and 1 working drive installed and reading the macOS install DVD. So we're good. Look, it even closes its little door correctly now. And I've also successfully got Sorbet Leopard image to one of the drives. But that's not all. I've actually set up 4 partitions here. You see, one of the best things about this early 800 megahertz iMac G4 is that it can still officially boot macOS 9. So I've got macOS 9.2.2 installed on a 10 gigabyte partition, Sorbet Leopard on a 20 gig partition, and then I have 2 15 gig partitions for future experimentation. But for now, let's play around with Sorbet Leopard. And actually, there's some stuff that I left out of our previous video on Sorbet that I definitely want to show you today. First, I want to go into Applications and Utility Scripts. And we need to run the maintenance scripts, which the creator of Sorbet Leopard kind of yelled at me for not including last time because this will definitely speed up the system. All right, tune-up is complete, and yeah, it feels just as fast and snappy as it did before. And I have to say, this is running unbelievably well. Just look how smooth this window drag is. But let's take a look at some of these other scripts in here because there's some really cool stuff. In fact, I was poking around, and under Dock and Aesthetics, we have the option to use the 2D dock or the 3D dock. Now, the 2D dock, this is something that I use all the time in Leopard. And actually, when I do a regular install of Leopard on a PowerPC Mac, I would always do this. You can, in the terminal, paste this command, and this will change the dock to a cool 2D black dock. So it's pretty cool that they included that just as a script. And yeah, check that out. I love the look of this 2D black dock. There we go. That looks great. And look how smooth it is. And remember, officially, this computer is not supposed to run Leopard. This is only 800 megahertz, and Leopard's minimum is 867. Yet, this is smooth as it can be. And then, of course, you know, we're going to put the theme on here. let's put the High Sierra theme on here. Use macOS High Sierra theme permanent. All right, there we go. macOS Sierra themed with the appropriate background. And look how smooth it is. Absolutely amazing. So I'd call this iMac pretty much sorted. Now, the next thing we're going to do with this, I think you know, we're going to take one of these partitions and install modern Linux on it. But we'll do that in another video. So that'll do it for this iMac G4 lampshade, now fully operational with a new super drive and a new SSD with 4 partitions, and I cannot wait to play with the other operating systems on here. We have macOS 9, we have Sorbet, Leopard, we're going to have Linux, and then we'll have room for one more mystery operating system. But until then, if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more lampshade shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Chris Allegretta, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Greg Rutke from Rutke Mods, Justin D. Morgan, and Nick Hamsey, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters for helping to make these videos possible.